Today, a desperate search for survivors. Nearly 160 people killed in Spain's catastrophic floods. Six Australians join hundreds of women accusing late billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed of sexual assault. One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, found to have racially vilified Greens Senator Mehreen Faruqi. And the ATO reveals more than 1,200 large companies haven't paid any tax. Hello, welcome to ABC News. I'm Lorna Dunkley. More than 1,000 rescue workers have been deployed to worst-hit areas of Spain following catastrophic floods that have killed around 160 people. The Prime Minister is warning residents the danger of further flooding hasn't passed.
Residents trudge through debris, searching for belongings and any sign of their loved ones. The task is monumental. Rescuers believe there are still bodies trapped in these cars, unable to get out before the deluge came through.
The
firefighters took the elderly first, when they could get in. I'm from nearby, so I tried to help and rescue people. People were crying all over. They were trapped.
The mammoth floodwaters tore down bridges and tossed cars across highways and crucial rail lines. Train services aren't expected to resume for weeks. A daunting clean-up is underway, but getting in desperately needed supplies and help isn't easy. Many areas are only accessible from the air. Frustration and desperation is growing.
We are not thieves, but we have to eat. What can I give to the child if we don't have electricity?
No one in this area can contact each other because we have no internet. There's about more than 150,000 people that have just been displaced.
Locals and those who have made it to the disaster zone are doing what they can, but with everything coated in a thick layer of mud, even walking is difficult. Spain's Prime Minister has warned the dangerous weather may not be finished. More heavy rain is expected in some of the worst-hit areas.
Do not go out, stay at home, because right now the most important thing is to safeguard as many lives as possible.
Farmers among those hurting. This disaster will have enduring consequences for the region, which is a global exporter of oranges. But for now, the focus is on finding those still missing as floodwaters recede. Michelle Rimmer, ABC News.
To America now, and with just 5 days to go until Election Day. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are in a battle for the Sunbelt swing states as the pair host rallies in Arizona and Nevada. Our North America correspondent Carrington Clark joins us now from Las Vegas. We're certainly getting to the pointy end now. Carrington, what's been happening there?
Yeah, we're getting to the pointy end of this campaign. We're also getting to the pointy end in preparation for the campaign rally that Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee, will be holding in Las Vegas in just a little while. She'll be joined here by global superstar Jennifer Lopez. Importantly, Jennifer Lopez is one of the most famous Puerto Ricans in the world, and we know that the Democratic campaign wants to keep bringing up those comments that we saw at Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally in New York, where a comedian described Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage. Now, they're hoping that that gets Puerto Ricans so angry that they get out and vote when they are if they're residents of American states or of Washington, D.C. They can't vote for the president if they're in Puerto Rico, despite it being an American territory. But it is an issue that they think they're making ground with, and that's why, in part, we're going to see Jennifer Lopez here in just a little while. This is a major campaign rally for the Vice President in what is described as the Sun Belt swing states. That's Nevada and Arizona. They are crucial to who will win this presidential election. Basically, there's three groups of states in that swing state. You've got the Sun Belt over here, you've got the southern states of North Carolina and Georgia, and then you have what used to be described as part of the Blue Wall, Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin. And so today, definitely the focus on this Sun Belt. Donald Trump is holding his own rallies across the area, but you will then start to see attention shift to those other states. Before we came here, we went to the Donald Trump rally, which is just across town, a place called Henderson, just outside Las Vegas. And we spoke to some of the supporters who had turned up there. And over again, we heard these recurring themes of why they were going to vote for Donald Trump. And really, they're the two major issues that Republicans think they're strongest on: immigration and the economy.
The economic front? I was better off 4 years ago. Okay, just that plain and simple.
You know what? We're going to be in deep trouble if Kamala Harris wins. Deep trouble.
If she gets into office, they're just going to bankrupt this country. I firmly believe that.
They don't represent the people that way, in the correct way. It makes us all look weak, and then other countries are laughing at us.
By comparison, when we came in, before we came in here to the Kamala Harris rally, we spoke to some of her supporters outside. Over and over again, we heard them talking about the need to have a right to reproductive health, abortion access, and also this concept of saving democracy. What is obvious is that the two groups of supporters are voting for very different issues. I will say, though, the overlap is, even here at the Democratic rally, we're also hearing the economy come up time and time again. The difference is they believe that Kamala Harris offers better solutions on economic matters than Donald Trump does.
It's interesting, isn't it, Carrington, looking at the movements of the Harris campaign, the Trump campaign, over these final remaining days. What do you think that tells us about their strategies?
I think it says that they know that this election will be won in these key 7 swing states. Donald Trump made an unusual stop, though. He did stop in New Mexico, which is not seen as at risk of falling to the Republicans. He said it was partly to kind of burnish his credentials with the Latino and Hispanic community. Donald Trump has been criticised by Democrats for his hard line on the border, this talk of deporting more than 10 million people. But he believes that there are inroads with the Latino community. And actually outside I spoke to a Harris supporter who described himself as Latino. He said he was strongly supporting the vice president, but his family is split. And even though their heritage here in America is linked to an illegal immigrant, his family, many of them believe that Donald Trump has better answers when it comes to the border and on economic issues. So Donald Trump is, according to the polls, doing better with the Latino community than he was previously, and he thinks there is a real shot that he can win both here in Nevada and in Arizona, both of whom voted for Joe Biden at the last election. So this is fascinating. The other big point of controversy, I should say, in the last day or so has been Donald Trump's comments where he basically doubled down on an earlier pledge to be the protector of women, effectively saying that if he was re-elected, he would be a protector of women. They wouldn't even have to worry about abortion access. He said himself that his team told him that wasn't a great idea, but this was Donald Trump doubling down on that commentary, and then this is the way that the vice president has responded.
I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country, they said. They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not.
He simply does not respect the freedom of women or the intelligence of women to know what's in their own best interest and make decisions accordingly. But we trust women.
So that was Kamala Harris speaking about Donald Trump's comments. Carrington, we have comprehensive coverage come Election Day here on ABC News. Where are you headed to?
So from here, I'll be heading to one of the other crucial swing states, Pennsylvania. It's the Keystone State, is its motto, but in this particular election, it's really earned that particular title because it is the largest of the swing states. It has 19 electoral college votes, and both sides are very much of the impression that if they don't win there, they're probably not going to win the White House. So that's definitely one to watch. But really, it is down to this 7-state group, which is where all the resources are currently being thrown, and the expenditure is quite astounding. We are here in Las Vegas at the moment. There is a giant building here called the Sphere. Anyone who's seen it, it's a big spherical shaped building, as you would expect. And Kamala Harris is paying a lot of money to ensure that her face is on that sphere at certain points throughout the day. Billions of dollars will be spent on this election, extraordinary amount of money, and both sides are really trying to grasp onto any of those voters who are still to decide who they're going to vote for. Many Americans have already voted in this election through early voting, but the margins are expected to be so tight that they know that they desperately need to grasp at whoever is left and hope that their side is able to come ahead of the other in that electoral college vote.
All right, Carrington, yes, some 63 million already voted. I know you'll be busy over the next few days. Thank you for now, and our teams will, of course, be busy as well. We have correspondents all over the country, and we have a main team in Washington to bring you full coverage of the US election here on the ABC News channel. The countdown from 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday, the 6th of November. That is next Wednesday. We'll have live programming throughout the day, bringing you analysis, bringing you those exit polls from America in an very important vote. In other news this afternoon, 6 Australian women have accused the former Harrods boss of sexual assault in what's been described as the worst case of corporate sexual abuse the world has ever seen. Lawyers have now officially launched legal action after more than 400 people came forward with harrowing allegations.
These are some of the hundreds of women who say they were sexually abused by Mohammed Al-Fayed.
In many ways, it's the worst case of corporate sexual abuse of women that the world has ever known.
Among the 420 people who've come forward, Australians who landed jobs at Harrods in their 20s.
Because when they were youngsters, they travelled and they came to London and they got a job at Harrods, and it was the most wonderful thing that they've ever had. A lot of them, after they'd been, subjected to this horrific ordeal, fled.
The shocking allegations stretch into sport. Footballers at the Fulham club Al-Fayed owned for 16 years say they were sexually harassed by the billionaire.
I know that by speaking out, we're making it harder for this kind of behaviour to be tolerated anywhere.
Al-Fayed, who died last year at the age of 94, owned Harrods between 1985 and 2010. Legal proceedings have now been officially launched against the department store. Lawyers told the ABC they're investigating abuse claims against children as young as 11.
He's a vile monster. Is there any other way to describe him?
While Mohammed Al-Fayed will never face justice himself, lawyers for the survivors say this legal action isn't about revenge, but accountability.
It means setting a precedent so that in the future, young girls don't go through the same thing.
Harrods' new owners are in the process of setting up a compensation scheme for survivors. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, London.
US negotiators have arrived in Israel to press the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, to agree to a ceasefire with militant group Hezbollah in Lebanon and with Hamas in Gaza. Israel is continuing its bombardment of Lebanon and Gaza despite calls for restraint. Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran is in Jerusalem.
The prospect of a ceasefire in Lebanon or Gaza may well appear slim, but Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister is certainly hopeful that a deal could be struck as soon as within a couple of days. 2 US Special Envoys, Amos Hochstein and Brett McGurk, have arrived here in Israel, sitting down with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Top of the agenda, that hostility with Lebanon, and a proposal which currently features or centres around a 60-day ceasefire before negotiators could nut out the details of a longer-term truce. The Israeli Prime Minister's office saying that Israel wants to ensure it still has the ability to respond to any threats from Lebanon. You'd have to say that that could be something which scuttles any deal with Hezbollah. Talk of an end to the hostilities certainly feels remote for communities in southern Lebanon as Israel continues its offensive there, targeting what it says are Hezbollah stockpiles and facilities. Civilians, including 6 doctors, caught in the strikes there and further north in the Bekaa Valley. A second day of evacuation orders issued by Israel for the city of Baalbek, sending thousands fleeing to nearby towns. Heavy bombardment continuing of the city, which is also home to World Heritage-listed Roman ruins. Reports also coming through the coastal city of Tyre has been targeted again. And in Gaza, local health authorities again raising the alarm about hostilities in the north, with further strikes in Beit Lahia, which have hit the Kamal Adwan hospital. Israel insists it's targeting Hamas militants there, but doctors argue that is not the case, that none are in that facility, and instead the strikes have hampered the hospital's operations and damaged medical stockpiles. Meanwhile, 5 people have been killed in a Hezbollah rocket attack in Metula in the far north of Israel. One other flown to hospital in the northern city of Haifa, which has also been coming under fire, with 2 Israelis killed there. And while Israel continues its campaigns in Gaza and in Lebanon, it is also facing a fight at home. The country's ultra-Orthodox population furious with a proposal to force it into the IDF. Hundreds of men protesting outside a military recruitment office here in Jerusalem, angered by calls from the country's defence chief to bolster military numbers by forcing them to be drafted into the IDF, something they've traditionally been exempt from, while most other Israelis have been required to complete national service. There are more than 1 million ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel, making up around 13% of the population. It's one of the problems Israel is having to grapple with. How does it continue to support its campaigns in the north and in the south, both in terms of boots on the ground and ongoing funding for the IDF?
Matthew Doran there. 2 people have died and hundreds have been injured by the most powerful typhoon to hit Taiwan in almost 30 years. Nearly 500,000 households lost power as the typhoon hit, packing winds gusts of more than 250 kilometres an hour. That's the equivalent of a Category 4 tropical cyclone. It was touch and go for this passenger plane in the strong winds. It did eventually land safely. Hundreds of flights, though, had to be cancelled. The clean-up begins across the island today. A Melbourne man has been sentenced to nearly 3 decades behind bars for the murder of his partner 4.5 years ago. Ricardo Barbaro stabbed 26-year-old mother Ellie Price 6 times in her South Melbourne apartment. He then fled interstate, and Miss Price's body went undiscovered for a number of days in early May 2020. The 38-year-old was today sentenced to 28 years in prison with a non-parole period of 22 years. A federal court judge has found One Nation leader Pauline Hanson breached the Racial Discrimination Act through a tweet directed at fellow Senator Mehreen Faruqi. Senator Hanson has been ordered to pay costs and delete the post, which was a reply to Senator Faruqi on the day Queen Elizabeth II died in 2022. Court reporter Jamie McKinnell joins us live from Sydney. Hi there, Jamie. Tell us about the online exchange that it was at the centre of this case.
G'day, Lorna. Well, on the day the Queen died, Senator Mehreen Faruqi, the Deputy Greens leader, took to Twitter, now X, and she posted that she couldn't mourn someone who she described as the leader of a racist empire. Now, that left Pauline Hanson quite angry, and in reply to that, Senator Pauline Hanson replied to Senator Faruqi in part saying, quote, "It's clear you're not happy, so pack your bags and piss off back to Pakistan." That last part was what was really at the centre of this case. Senator Faruqi was arguing that that was a breach of racial discrimination laws. But Senator Hanson's lawyers were trying to defend it by saying that her tweet fell into a legal exemption which allows for fair comment about a matter of public interest if a person's beliefs are genuinely held. Today, Justice Angus Stewart has rejected that argument, and he said this was really an angry personal attack by Pauline Hanson. He said that the tweet conveyed a racist and anti-immigrant message. Interestingly, he found that Muslims are not necessarily a protected group in Australia under the Racial Discrimination Act within the meaning of race, colour or national or ethnic origin. But let's have a listen now to how the judge still found that Senator Faruqi won this case.
However, because Senator Faruqi's identity as a person of colour, an immigrant and a Muslim are inseparable, and because almost all Muslims in Australia are persons of colour and immigrants or of relatively recent migrant heritage, Senator Hanson's conduct because of Senator Faruqi being Muslim was also conduct because of her race, colour or national or ethnic origin.
So, Jamie, what's been the reaction so far to this decision?
Well, Pauline Hanson wasn't in court to hear this decision, but she did go back on Twitter today to express her disappointment at how the federal court has ruled in this case. She's also said that she plans to appeal and said the outcome demonstrates the inappropriately broad application of racial discrimination laws, particularly, she says, insofar as it impinges on freedom of political expression. From Mehreen Faruqi's point of view, she's quite happy. She says this decision is a vindication for anyone who's told anything along the lines of go back to where you came from.
Today's ruling tells us that telling someone to go back to where they came from is a strong form of racism. And it is also an affirmation for migrants that people of colour do not have to be grateful or to keep quiet. And I will be speaking out more loudly and more strongly than ever before.
Part of this decision has been ordered to delete the tweet and pay Senator Faruqi's costs. We did ask Senator Faruqi whether she is expecting an apology from Pauline Hanson, and she told us that although she believes Pauline Hanson has a lot to apologise for, she's not holding her breath for that to happen.
Jamie McKinnell, thank you. A new report that has revealed that more than 1,200 companies paid no tax in the past financial year. The Australian Taxation Office's annual Corporate Tax Transparency Report shows of the nearly 4,000 firms that lodged their returns, around 30% did not pay any tax. Business reporter Nasim Kadem has the details.
So the ATO's data looks at about 4,000 entities. So this year they've actually included more companies in their report. They've included private companies with turnover of between 100 million and 200 million, as well as all the large multinational companies. And what the data shows is that of those 4,000 entities, or almost 4,000, more than 1,200 of them did not pay a cent of tax.
Nasim, what are the reasons they're giving for not paying tax?
So there's a lot of reasons, and many of them are legitimate reasons, why a company can reduce its tax bill. One of those reasons is it actually hasn't made a profit in that financial year. So this is looking at the 2022-23 financial year. Another reason is that it might have had profits, but then it could offset those profits against losses that it's made. So it basically claims those, or it claims tax deductions. You know, you and I can also claim tax deductions on our tax return, although they're not nearly as high as what these big corporates claim. And then they can also offset prior year losses against their current tax bills.
What then is the ATO saying about the level of profit shifting?
So there is still profit shifting going on. There's a global plan that was put out by the OECD, and that plan is now talking about a global minimum tax rate of 15%, but Australia's tax rate is still at 30%. And so even if companies are paying the global minimum tax rate, it's still far from 30%. And the ATO is saying that they're seeing a number of companies, particularly in food and beverage, in technology, but really across the board, that are profit shifting, that are not declaring income here that they should be declaring.
Naseem, thank you. Elevated fluoride levels have been found in drinking water in 2 remote Indigenous communities. It's prompted the Northern Territory government to start supplying bottled water for young children and pregnant women in these communities. It follows new research by the United States government linking high fluoride exposure to lower IQs in children. Reporter Lee Robinson joins us now from Alice Springs. Hi there, Lee. And which communities exactly have been affected by this?
Good afternoon, Lorna. It's the communities of Nirripie and Alparulam Lake Nash in Central Australia that have been impacted. And although fluoride helps to repair teeth and has been safely added to drinking water in low levels in dozens of countries for years, it's the naturally occurring high levels of fluoride found in Nirripie and Alparulam's drinking water that is cause for concern. It is above the World Health Organization's safe limit of fluoride in drinking water. Now, this new research has been conducted by the United States National Toxicology Program, and it's found that drinking water with high levels of fluoride, so above 1.5 milligrams per litre, is linked with lower IQs in young children. Now, the study didn't find any adverse effects on adults, and in response, the Power and Water Corporation in the Northern Territory has begun delivering 2 litres of bottled water per person per day for all children aged 12 years and under and for pregnant women. I spoke to Nirripie community leader Verona Jarrah earlier, who told me the community was furious that they had only first learnt about the dangers of elevated fluoride exposure at a meeting last month. Take a listen.
You know, the people at Nirripie weren't warned earlier about the water. As soon as they heard that, they all got a shock and they were really worried, you know. For me, I work at the school and I stepped up and talked, what about our kids in the school, because they drink lots of water.
Now, the Power and Water Corporation, which is an anti-government-owned utility, hasn't provided a date for how long this practice of delivering bottled water to each of the communities will continue for. What they have said, though, is that they have drilled new bores in both of those communities and are investigating the levels of fluoride and whether water treatment may be required. Lorna?
Lee Robinson, thank you. New South Wales police say 2 service dogs died yesterday after their air-conditioned pods were failed. The police force launched a priority internal investigation into the deaths. The state's police commissioner, Karen Webb, says a technical issue and not human error is to blame.
That air conditioner cools the pod on the rear of the vehicle, so it is modified for that exact reason. It's top of the range stuff that was introduced back in 2023. So we have really good equipment. We don't understand why that's taken place. It is normal procedure that we can actually put the dogs in the pod. Primary cooling source would be the air conditioner. Unfortunately, when we returned to the motor vehicle, it had ceased, which obviously that makes the air conditioner cease as well. Those dogs can be in the rear of a car at night time for long periods of time. So it's not unusual and nowhere near against any SOPs or processes or training that we've given the officers.
The Bank of China is on the brink of opening its first branch in the Pacific, with Papua New Guinea close to giving it the green light. PNG's foreign minister says he expects final approval to be granted late this year or early next year. It is a development which Australia is watching closely, with some analysts raising concerns about the strategic implications. Let's bring in Stephen Jedgetts, who is across this story for us today. Hi there. Just how close then is the Bank of China to opening a branch, do you think?
Look, it sounds like it's very close indeed. We understand that the licensing fee has now been paid. So all that has to happen now is the Bank of PNG, the Reserve Bank of that country, has to give the green light. Now, exactly when that's likely to happen, we don't know. Justin Tshichenko, as you mentioned, the Foreign Minister of Papua New Guinea, is saying he hopes it can happen within the next couple of months before the end of this year. If not, he says it could happen perhaps early next year. Now, there's no absolute guarantee that the BPNG does give it the green light, but the broad expectation across the PNG political class is that this will happen, not least because the government has made it clear it's such a big priority. And PNG's government is really enthusiastic about this. They say that once the bank opens up a full branch, at the moment it's only got a representative office in Port Moresby, but when it opens up a full branch, it will open up all sorts of economic opportunities for the country, including making it easier for local businesses to trade in Chinese currency. They say that if they do that, then it will be easier for them to bring down the prices of everyday goods because they'll be able to purchase in bulk in renminbi. All of this, they say, means it will be a huge economic boon for the country.
Looking at the bigger geopolitical implications, Steve, why does it matter?
Yeah, it matters for a couple of reasons, and Australian analysts and officials are a little bit less rosy in their assessment of what this might mean. The first thing is that the Bank of China doesn't operate by the same rules that Western banks operate by, and in particular, there's a level of concern amongst analysts and officials about the strength of money laundering or anti-money laundering measures taken by the Bank of China, for example. The system is much more opaque, and so there's much less confidence amongst those people who look at these transactions closely that things like money laundering will be watched and monitored appropriately. On top of that, you've also got, perhaps by coincidence, a new casino, PNG's first, opening, at least in theory, next year, the so-called Paga Hill development. Now, this is a massive, sprawling development that means not just a casino opening, but also essentially a whole special economic zone with far looser customs and other restrictions, as well as hotels and a cruise ship berth. The concern amongst people who watch these things closely is that the combination of a country with relatively weak financial controls with a new bank that doesn't play by the same rules as Western banks and a casino could provide a hub for financial crime and other illicit activity, particularly money laundering. This has happened in other countries, including in Southeast Asia. The anxiety in places like Canberra is that a similar thing could happen in Port Moresby. Now, it's worth saying that PNG's government has fiercely denied that this is a risk, as have the Paga Hill developers. They say that the rules will be enforced and that new anti-corruption regulations that have been brought in will make sure there's no wrongdoing. But I don't think that will be enough to dissipate the anxiety that we'll see in Canberra over this development.
All right, Stephen, thanks for that. Let's take a quick look at the national weather, shall we? A shower or two and a possible storm for Brisbane this afternoon. A shower or two for Sydney as well. Partly cloudy in Canberra, cloud clearing in Melbourne. A shower or two clearing, though, for Hobart. Mostly sunny in Adelaide and Perth. And in Darwin, a shower or two for you. You're watching ABC News. These are our top stories this hour. Officials in Spain say many people are still missing after catastrophic floods left around 160 people dead. Most of the deaths occurred in the eastern region of Valencia, where emergency teams are continuing to search for victims. Officials say rebuilding the damaged areas could take months. A Melbourne man's been sentenced to nearly 3 decades behind bars for the murder of his partner in 2020. Ricardo Barbaro stabbed 26-year-old mother Ellie Price 6 times in her South Melbourne apartment and then fled interstate. The 38-year-old was today sentenced to 28 years in prison with a non-parole period of 22 years. Sydney's federal court has found One Nation leader Pauline Hanson racially vilified Greens Senator Mehreen Faruqi in a tweet in September 2022. Senator Hanson told Ms Faruqi to piss off back to Pakistan in the post. The tweet followed a social media post by Senator Faruqi about the death of Queen Elizabeth II. And a new report has revealed that more than 1,200 companies paid no tax in the past financial year. The annual corporate tax transparency report shows of the 4,000 firms that lodged their returns, around 30% did not pay tax. The ATO says there can be legitimate reasons, but it's paying attention to ensure that companies are not trying to game the system. Taiwan has been hit by its biggest typhoon in nearly 30 years. 2 people have died and around 200 injured after Typhoon Conrey swept through the island. East Asia correspondent Kathleen Calderwood joins us now from Taipei. A lot of damage there. What are conditions like now, Kathleen?
Well, the storm has moved across the island, but we're still getting substantial rain here. I'm in the north of Taiwan in Taipei, and even here the rain is quite heavy. When the storm was coming over last night, there was extremely heavy rain, but the wind in particular was just remarkable. Now, I'm several hundred kilometres north of where the storm made landfall, so you can imagine how ferocious it must have been. You can see behind me that a large tree branch has fallen down. As I've looked around the city over the last 24 hours, there are scenes like this everywhere, including entire trees being knocked over. So things are much worse in the south, where the worst of the damage is. There's been extreme flooding, lots of landslides and rock falls. And as that storm made landfall, gusts of up to 230 kilometres an hour were being recorded. So that's the equivalent of about a Category 4 cyclone. Now, there are currently also 4 hunters missing that obviously authorities are looking for, and there's also some concerns about the potential for an oil spill from a stranded tanker on the northern coast. Conditions haven't been good enough for authorities to dispatch recovery vessels, so they're hoping that by this afternoon, if conditions improve, they'll be able to send out some vessels to ensure that there isn't any kind of environmental disaster there as well.
So, Kathleen, where's the typhoon headed now?
Well, it's moved into the Taiwan Strait and it's heading north now along the Chinese coast. And so the cities in Fujian province and other areas are obviously bracing for those rains. We're already experiencing them as well. But Shanghai in particular is really bracing. The authorities there have warned people that they could experience rain the worst in up to 40 years. So classes have moved online in Shanghai today, and people are really on high alert to see how this storm affects them as it continues to move north along the coast.
Kathleen Calderwood, thank you very much for that. Let's return to the situation in the Middle East now. We're just hearing from the Reuters news agency that the US Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin has been discussing opportunities for regional de-escalation with his Israeli counterpart in the area. That according to the Pentagon, who said that there was a call that happened within the last half hour. Well, the fighting continues in Gaza. But Australian doctor Jeremy Hickey returned last night from his second mission volunteering there. He was stationed at the Al-Aqsa Hospital in central Gaza and spent 4 weeks dealing with mass casualties and an overwhelmed health system. He joins us now from Perth to talk about his experiences. Jeremy, hi there. So as I mentioned, you've just got back. What is your overall feeling?
Hi, Lorna. Thanks very much for having me on. The overall feeling is just, it's a horrible, harrowing feeling, seeing how things have progressed during my time there, and also since I was first in Gaza in June and July. The situation in the north is obviously having a big impact on people further south, but there's a palpable change in the frequency and also the severity of the onslaught that's happening in the central and south parts of Gaza as well.
Jeremy, what exactly was it that you were doing?
So I'm an anaesthetist by trade. So I was working primarily with a reconstructive orthopaedic surgeon to help people suffering significant dysfunction and impairment as a result of injuries sustained during the war. But also dealing a lot with mass casualties in the emergency room and with emergency cases in the operating theatres as well.
As I mentioned, you're at the Al-Aqsa Hospital, and I know it was hit in strikes. So we've got some pictures as well of the fire that engulfed the hospital after that. I know you weren't directly there, but talk us through what was happening as this fire ripped through your hospital.
So this fire occurred, or this a bombing occurred just after we had activated a mass casualty in the emergency room. So we were already dealing with this when we felt and heard the bomb go off in the tent area in the precinct of the hospital. So it was quite scary for obviously everyone where we were, but also those outside, because it was very close to the front entrance or the emergency entrance of the hospital. And subsequent to this as well, because of the fire that was going on, there was some nearby gas cylinders which also exploded as well, causing further injury. And then this is in the setting of, within the previous few days or within the previous week, a mosque across the road from the hospital had also been bombed, causing a significant number of deaths and injuries as well.
Is it all the patients that are in these hospitals, and I know most of the hospitals in Gaza aren't operational at all anymore, are they all from conflict?
Yeah, look, most or pretty much all are either directly or indirectly from the conflict. Most, though, I'd say 95% of cases are probably directly from the conflict. We do occasionally see some other cases trickle through, like cancer cases or things like developmental hip dysplasia in children, which would have been picked up and treated sooner, except for the fact that the basic sort of primary health care and elective health care within Gaza is completely collapsed. So these are all sort of injuries and issues that we're seeing because of the collapse of the healthcare system since the war started.
I know the hospitals, any medical assistance within Gaza is completely reliant on the Israelis being letting it in, but you working for an NGO as well, and am I right in saying that you've been restricted from actually working in Gaza?
Yes, so a big problem over the last week or two. There were a total of 7 NGOs, including Fajr, who I work with, that were restricted from entering Gaza on further missions. The reasons for this have not been made clear. And this is, we're already dealing with smaller numbers of medical specialists being allowed in since the Rafah border was taken over by the Israeli Defence Force as well. And then on top of this, we've also got the issue of COGAT and the IDF severely restricting and in a lot of cases not allowing medical aid and food aid through some of the borders as well. So it is a massive problem with now personnel being limited even further from entering Gaza as well.
Jeremy, you sent us some pictures of you working at the hospital, and to anyone on the outside it looks like a normal hospital environment. I know it's not like that, and I have to put this to you. Israel says that these hospitals, these schools are sheltering Hamas fighters. Did you see any?
Not that I could say, no. Look, everyone who I've seen and spoken to are regular citizens. They are just trying to eke out what they can. The patients we see are innocent victims of a war that they shouldn't have anything to do with, and so yeah.
Just finally, Jeremy, a difficult one for you, I know, but how do you feel getting on a plane and leaving Gaza?
It's definitely a bittersweet sort of thing. So look, I've been away for a month and I miss my family, I miss my kids dearly. So seeing them is a huge thing and a huge relief for me, especially in the face of the number of child victims that we see in Gaza. But it's very harrowing to think that the friends and the new family that I make in Gaza, I may not see again. Each time I speak to them through social media or WhatsApp or anything like this, it's hard to know if this will be the last time I'll speak to them. And this is definitely something which is more palpable amongst the locals. Since I was there last time, they are all much more frank and open about their mortality because they just don't know how and if and when this is going to end.
Anaesthetist Dr. Jeremy Hickey, thank you for talking to ABC News.
Thanks so much.
We are catching up with all the finance news now. Sam Yang is here. Hi Sam, nice to see you. So tell us about tech stocks on Wall Street. What's happening?
Yeah, Lorna, it was a big sell-off on Wall Street overnight because Microsoft and Meta both highlighted the rising costs for AI. So basically, investors did not like to hear that. They're basically saying they have open-ended budgets for AI spend that could potentially damage their profitability. Now, shares of Meta slipped 4.1% and Microsoft fell 6%, despite both companies beating earnings results. In their release. Amazon also beat revenue estimates boosted by strong growth in its cloud services units. Apple also beat revenue and profitability profit expectations as iPhone sales grew. So despite all of that beating estimates, Wall Street ended sharply lower. If we can bring it up for you on the screen there, the Dow Jones Index down 0.9%, the S&P 500 down 1.9%, and the Nasdaq Composite lost 2.9%, Lorna.
All right, Sam, how are the local markets faring?
Well, the Australian share market is tracking lower today. Basically, that's impacted by the performance on Wall Street overnight. All sectors, most sectors are trading in the red. It's absolutely a gloomy day. Let's take a look at the numbers now. The All Ords and the ASX 200 index are down around 1% each. Financial and mining stocks are leading the losses. If I take a look at the movers now, investment bank Macquarie slumped 3.7% after first half profit misses estimates on downbeat commodities units. Supermarket chain IGA's parent company Metcash hires Scott Marshall as the new chief executive of its independent hardware retailer. Share price is fairly flat at the moment. Among the best performers are Heliad Group, Web Travel and Qantas. Turning across the region now, where the NZ 50 is down around 0.2% at the moment. Markets in Japan, Nikkei has opened lower, while markets across China will get underway shortly. Commodity markets now, gold is up. Oil prices extended gains, rising on a report that Iran is preparing to attack Israel from Iraqi territory in the coming days. And finally, the Australian dollar is a little weaker against the greenback. It's buying around 65.8 US cents. And Lorna, that's finance.
Sam, thanks very much. The Queensland Premier will unveil his new cabinet today, 4 days after being sworn into the top job. The new Premier has remained tight-lipped about his ministry, but has left the door open to potential changes to portfolios. It comes after Mr Crisafulli stood by his promise to axe the state's truth-telling and healing inquiry, despite some labelling the move a lost opportunity. The inquiry, which was launched earlier this year to examine the impacts of colonisation on First Nations people, has now paused its work. Mr Crisafulli says he will look at other measures to improve the lives of the Indigenous population.
We've made a decision, it's the right decision and we stand by it, but I don't want to cause angst to people. I want people to know that we are going to do good things for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The new government has been very clear that we are not embarking on that process. We look forward to people coming to us with ideas of how we can improve the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. That's what we want. That's what we want from people who have an interest in doing good by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We don't believe embarking on that process will be one that unites the community, but we do believe we can do so much more.
Now, the largest ever donation to the University of New South Wales Kirby Institute will be used to tackle cervical cancer in 7 Pacific Island countries. The $26 million donation will be used to help screen and treat more than 130,000 women in places like Fiji and the Marshall Islands. For more, I'm joined by Professor Andrew Vallely, who joins us in the studio. Hi there, nice to see you. Andrew, let's start with the basics. How much of a problem is cervical cancer in these specific nations?
Well, cervical cancer is, in terms of the burden worldwide, in our region, we have among the highest global burden of cervical cancer, with rates, sadly, of mortality, women dying from cervical cancer in PNG and the Pacific of around 14 times higher than we see in Australia. So it really is a very, very, very great burden. And at community level, when we talk to families and we talk to those we work with, this is seen as a huge priority.
Why are women on Pacific Islands dying? Because detection and treatment of cervical cancer has improved so much.
It has very much in Australia and high-income countries, but for many years we've, and our partners have struggled really to implement programs that really can reach out into the rural and remote settings, and particularly with Pap tests, cytology-based screening, and other forms of screening such as visual inspection. They've relied on pelvic examination, which of course are very unacceptable for women, difficult to implement at scale, because every single woman that comes for screening is required to have a pelvic exam. And this further is compounded by the sheer geography and the diversity of the settings in which we work.
Right, is getting to people a problem?
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think one of the things that our partners, particularly in Western Highlands, the program that this new one builds on, in Western Highlands, the program there has been incredibly innovative in taking forward a mobile clinic truck, a van that goes out into the community. And this initiative has seen that of the 24,000 women that we've helped to screen in that province, over half have actually been screened out in the rural and remote communities. And similarly in Vanuatu, the team that we support there have been amazing. And they'll take small boats, charter boats, they'll charter small planes, they'll pretty much do anything to get into the community to deliver this service, which is amazing.
And how much of a game changer is it to allow women to take their own samples, if you like, to be able to then be analysed? They don't have to come into main hubs.
It's an enormous game. It's a huge game changer. It really has made all of the difference. So women who are coming to the clinic, we can ask them to self-collect a specimen. That can be tested there and then in the clinic. We can get a result to her within an hour. And then those women who test positive, and only those women who test positive, are offered a pelvic examination to assess their suitability for treatment. And that treatment can be provided the same day. So this whole approach is a huge game changer for women in the Pacific.
So, Andrew, $26 million, where's it come from?
The $26 million, we're delighted that we have the support from the Swire Group, and it's really, really fabulous. We're so thrilled for our partners in particular. It's their vision and their leadership that we want to support. They've really inspired us in all of our work over many, many years. And it builds on earlier philanthropic and development partner donations and investment in the region to really try and advance this entire cervical cancer elimination agenda across the Pacific.
It is wonderful news for those specific countries. Professor Andrew Vallely, thank you.
Thank you.
Catching up with all the sports news now, Daniela Intili is here in the studio. Hi, Danny. The AFL career of a Melbourne player, Joel Smith, is it over?
I'd say potentially. So he's going to be handed, or expected to be handed, a 4-year ban, Lorna, today on cocaine use and drug trafficking. So he had been provisionally suspended in October 2023 after he tested positive to cocaine following a match in August. And then he was later accused of trafficking or attempted trafficking of the drug by the Sports Integrity Australia. So the Herald Sun is reporting the ban will be confirmed by the AFL and Sport Integrity Australia today. And so that will certainly end his career. He is the son of former Melbourne Demon star Sean Smith. He played 42 matches for the D's since being selected for the 41st pick of the 2018 rookie draft.
All right, this sacking in the Rugby League, Josh Shadow Carr, what's been the fallout from it?
Yeah, it was of immediate effect, and of course it followed the failed roadside drug tests that he had just before the finals last month. So he fronted Canterbury Bankstown's board of directors yesterday, put his case with the club but was dismissed. He's always maintained, Lorna, that he did not knowingly take illicit drugs. We know the impact that it had on Canterbury's finals campaigns as well. So in axing Addo Carr, Canterbury's going to clear around $500,000 for the salary cap.
Oh, interesting. Let's talk tennis. How's it going in Paris?
Oh, very good for two of our Aussies, Alex de Minaur and Jordan Thompson, through to the quarterfinals at the Paris Masters. So really impressive. De Minaur fighting from a setback to beat world number 15 Jack Draper of Great Britain 5-7, 6-2, 6-3. That moves de Minaur up to 8th in the world rankings, and Lorna propels him on the verge of qualifying for this season-ending 8-person ATP finals. Jordan Thompson also through to the quarters for the first, in what will be the first time in his career, a 7-5, 7-6 win over French veteran Adrian Manarino. So Thompson will take on the 15th seed Ugo Umber, and for de Minaur, he'll meet the 13th seed Holger Rune, while fellow Aussie Alexei Poprin unfortunately has bowed out.
OK. Finally, NBL, how did Melbourne United go?
They have had a third straight win and beating the Sydney Kings 87-83 at John Cain Arena. Xavier Cooks, he scored a game-high 18 for the Kings. Unfortunately, Lorna, it was not enough. 2 3-pointers in the final 70 seconds by Jack White secured the victory for United. White also finished with another double-double, so 14 points and 11 rebounds. So Melbourne now second with 7-3 record. Sydney in fifth, having lost 3 games in a row. But let's hear from the player of the game, White.
I'm just happy we got the win. Sydney's a hell of a team. We had plenty of goals and what we wanted to limit it to during the game. They made some big plays at the end of the game, and found myself some good spots to make some in return.
Sydney Thunder had their first win of the WBBL season, Lorna, beating the Hobart Hurricanes by 33 points. You're going to see a magnificent catch here by Molly Strano. I've got a replay. It is a one-handed catch off her own bowling. In contention probably for catch of the season, but unfortunately not enough. Heather Knight scoring 48 as the Thunder posted 146, and Hannah Darlington taking 3 wickets for Sydney.
Danny, thank you very much for that. Let's check on the weather forecast for the weekend ahead. Nate Byrne has that.
It was very stormy for southeastern Queensland, northeastern New South Wales yesterday. That all moved offshore this morning, but the setup's the same. Same troughs in the same place means we're getting the same round of storms again today. Meanwhile, over in the west, heat that's been lingering in WA is being pulled southwards to cause some extreme fire danger for the southwest of that state. We've got plenty of action across the tropics, but it's really Queensland and New South Wales looking at that potential for severe thunderstorms, large to giant hail, heavy falls, damaging winds. Watch for warnings. Through the outlook, we'll see this front making its way into the southeast. Not doing much in terms of delivering rain, but it'll grab that heat from the interior and drag it into the southeastern corner. So quick pulse of warmth over the weekend. A subsequent front will help bring some more falls to the east as well. That's going to happen from the second half of next week. Timing's still a little bit uncertain, but it looks like you might get a decent drop as that one comes in. But for now, it's the heat out of this first frontal system that I'm watching in the southeast corner. Adelaide's getting to 35, 27 in Melbourne. It's aiming for 23 in Hobart. For the east coast, a possible shower still for Brisbane. 27-degree day there. A bit grey then for Canberra. It's aiming for 25, and Sydney 22 for you. Perth, expect a shower or two. It's aiming for 22. And up top Darwin, you could get a shower or a storm. It'll be a maximum of 33.
Nate, thanks very much for that. Lots still to come on the ABC News channel in the next hour. I'll be talking to an American journalist about how the media, both in America and here in Australia, has been covering the election. That coming up next Wednesday. That's the next hour on the ABC News channel. And we'll also be taking a look at the situation in Spain, where horrific scenes have played out after this really bad weather hit the area over a short period of time, and the mayor there warning that there is more bad weather to come. That and much more on our top stories on the ABC News channel next. Bye-bye.